When you remove yourself from someone's life, something interesting happens. Human nature kicks in, and suddenly what was once taken for granted starts feeling like a loss. It's the way we're wired. We don't truly appreciate what we have until it's gone, or at least until we think it might be. That's why no contact works in ways you wouldn't expect. It's not about playing games, it's about letting space do what words can't. When someone is always there, always reachable, always responding, the mind doesn't have time to process their importance. Familiarity breeds comfort, and sometimes that comfort leads to complacency. But take that presence away, and suddenly there's a shift. It creates an emotional void, and the natural response to a void is to fill it. That's why no contact has such a powerful impact. It forces reflection. It forces someone to confront the silence. And in that silence, they start to realize what they had. Men in particular respond to distance in a unique way. While women tend to process emotions in real time, men often don't fully register their feelings until after the fact. In the moment, they might feel relief, freedom, even distraction. But give it time, and the mind starts working differently. The moments you shared, the inside jokes, the way you made them feel, all of it resurfaces when they least expect it. It happens when they hear a song that reminds them of you. It happens when they drive past a place you used to go together. It happens when they pick up their phone and realize there's no message from you like there used to be. That absence becomes louder than any words you could have spoken. There's something called the scarcity principle. It's the idea that people place a higher value on things that are rare or difficult to obtain. The moment something isn't readily available, its perceived worth increases. That's why luxury brands limit supply. That's why people chase after what seems just out of reach. And that's exactly why no contact has such a profound effect. When you step back, when you remove yourself, you are no longer an option he can take for granted. You become something rare, something valuable, something he has to work to get back. And it's not just about making someone miss you. It's about rediscovering your own value in the process. See, when you're constantly in someone's life, pouring energy into them, checking on them, trying to remind them of your worth, you're actually doing the opposite of what you intend. You're proving that your presence is guaranteed. But the moment you step back, everything shifts. Suddenly, you're not proving your worth through words or effort. You're proving it through absence, through silence, through the undeniable truth that you are not someone who waits around to be chosen. That's a powerful thing. That's what makes a man start to think, wait a minute, what if I lost something I didn't even realize I needed? That's when he starts to remember the moments he brushed off. That's when he starts to regret the times he assumed you'd always be there. And that's when he starts to wonder if maybe, just maybe, he made a mistake. But here's the key. This only works if you truly commit to it. No half measures, no I'll just check in once, no breaking the silence to see if he's thinking about you, because the power of no contact isn't just in what it does to him. It's in what it does for you. It's about stepping into your worth, knowing that you are enough without needing to prove it to anyone. It's about recognizing that your presence and when you move with that kind of confidence, people feel it, they sense it. And that's when the dynamic shifts. So when you step back, when you allow silence to do its work, don't be surprised when he reappears. Because that's what happens when someone starts to feel the weight of your absence. That's what happens when they realize they had something truly special. And that's when you'll know this wasn't about making him miss you. It was about making him see your value in a way he never did before. Men and women process emotions in completely different ways. It's not about who cares more or who feels deeper. It's about timing, about how those emotions surface and when they truly hit. See, when a relationship ends, it's often the woman who feels the full weight of it right away. she processes it in the moment. She talks about it. She feels it. She goes through the emotions as they come. She might cry. She might overanalyze. She might struggle, but she's facing it head on. A man, he doesn't always do that. Not at first. A lot of men, when something ends, push those emotions aside. They distract themselves. They focus on other things. They tell themselves they're fine. It's not necessarily that they don't care. It's that they don't let themselves care, at least not right away. They compartmentalize. It's like putting those emotions in a box, shoving it onto a shelf, and deciding, I'll deal with that later. But here's the thing about emotions. They don't stay locked away forever. Eventually, that box is going to open. And when it does, when the silence kicks in, when he realizes that the person he thought would always be there isn't, that's when it starts to hit. At first, he might not even notice it. He's keeping busy. He's living his life. Maybe he's out with friends. Maybe he's scrolling through his phone. Maybe he's telling himself he made the right choice. But then, out of nowhere, something shifts. He reaches for his phone to send a text, and then it hits him. You're not there anymore. That daily check-in, gone. That inside joke he used to laugh about, there's no one to share it with. That comfort of knowing you'd always pick up, always respond, always be around, it's missing. And suddenly, the weight of what he lost starts to settle in. See, men don't always feel the loss immediately because they don't expect things to change so drastically. They assume life will keep moving the same way it always has. But when you go no contact, when you remove yourself completely, you force a shift in that reality. You take away the safety net. And that's when the regret creeps in. That's when the memories start replaying in his mind. That's when he starts to ask himself, did I take her for granted? And here's the kicker. By the time he realizes it, by the time he truly starts to feel the weight of your absence, you have already done the hard work. You've already faced the emotions, processed them, grown from them. You've already moved forward while he's just starting to look back. And that's why so many men reappear when you least expect it, because it takes them time to catch up. But that's not your problem. That's not your burden to carry. You don't sit around waiting for someone to realize your worth. You don't put your life on hold for a delayed reaction. You step into your power, you embrace your value, and you keep moving forward. Because the right person, the one who truly sees you, who truly appreciates you, they won't need time and distance to figure it out. They'll know it in the moment, and they'll act like it before it's too late. When a relationship starts to fall apart, there's often a power shift. But most people don't even realize it's happening. See, in the beginning, everything is balanced. There's mutual interest, mutual effort, mutual appreciation. But over time, that balance can start to tilt. Maybe one person starts giving more, starts chasing, starts proving their worth. And the other, they start pulling back. Not always intentionally, but they start to feel like they don't have to try as hard. They start to take the other person's presence for granted. That's where the dynamic shifts. That's where one person feels in control and the other feels like they're just trying to hold on. But here's the truth. Love should never feel like something you have to convince someone to value. The moment you feel like you're proving your worth to someone who should already see it, you've already lost your power. And that's why no contact is so important. It's not about manipulation. It's not about playing games. It's about resetting the balance, about stepping back into your own self-worth, about making it clear that you are not someone who begs for attention or validation. When you go no contact, something incredible happens. You take your power back. You shift the energy, because instead of focusing on what he thinks, what he feels, what he wants, you start focusing on you. And when you do that, when you stop chasing, when you stop over explaining, when you stop trying to remind someone of your value, you make them feel that absence in a way words never could. Think about it. People respect confidence. They admire independence. And the moment you stop trying to hold on to someone who was willing to let you go, you send a message without saying a single word. You say, I am worth more than this. You say, I know my value. And you say, if you can't see that, then that's your loss. And trust me, they feel that. They feel it when they go to check their phone and there's no message from you. They feel it when they start wondering why you haven't reached out. They feel it when they see you moving on, thriving, happy without them. Because nothing makes someone question their choices more than seeing you live a life they assume you wouldn't be able to without them. That's why men reappear. It's not just because they miss you. It's because they feel the power shift. They feel the loss of control. They realize that they're no longer the center of your world, that they no longer have guaranteed access to you. And that realization, that's what makes them start to question everything. But by the time they do, you've already changed. You've already grown. And that's when you get to decide, do you even want what you were chasing before? Or have you realized that the real prize was never them? It was always you. Silence is powerful. People don't notice noise. It's always there, always buzzing in the background. But silence, that's what makes people stop and pay attention. That's what lingers in the mind long after a conversation has ended. And that's exactly why no contact works the way it does. It creates a shift, a pause, a space where curiosity starts to grow. Because when someone expects to hear from you and suddenly doesn't, their mind starts filling in the blanks. They start wondering, what is she doing? Why hasn't she reached out? Is she moving on? See, when you are always available, always responding, always checking in, he never had to wonder. He never had to question whether you were there because you always were. But the moment that stops, the moment you go silent, the dynamic changes. Now he has to deal with the unknown. And people don't like the unknown. They don't like not having answers. So what do? They start looking for them. At first, it's subtle. He might casually check your social media just to see if anything's changed. He might ask mutual friends about you just to keep tabs. He might replay old conversations in his mind, trying to figure out when things shifted. But over time, that curiosity turns into something stronger. It turns into FOMO, the fear of missing out. Because now, in his mind, the possibility that you might actually be moving on, that you might be doing better without him, starts to feel real. And that's when the regret starts creeping in. He remembers the way you laughed at his jokes, even the bad ones. He remembers how you supported him, how you were always in his corner. He remembers the way you made him feel, seen, appreciated, valued. And now, he's not sure if anyone else is making him feel that way. And that uncertainty, that's what eats away at him. Because while you were healing, while you were rediscovering yourself, while you were moving forward, he was stuck looking back. But here's the thing. You weren't doing any of this for him. You weren't staying silent to make him wonder. You weren't growing to prove a point. You were just living your life. And that's what makes it so powerful. Because nothing is more attractive than someone who doesn't need validation. Someone who isn't waiting for permission to be happy. Someone who knows their worth without needing someone else to confirm it. That's why men reappear. It's not just because they miss you. It's because they see you thriving without them, and they start to wonder if they let something irreplaceable slip through their fingers. They realize that they aren't as unforgettable as they thought. And that thought alone is enough to make them come back, But by the time they do, you've already built a life that doesn't revolve around them. And that's when you get to decide whether their reappearance even matters at all. Time has a way of changing how people see things. When someone is always around, when their presence is guaranteed, it's easy to overlook them. It's easy to assume they'll always be there, always be available, always be waiting. But take that presence away, create distance, and suddenly memories start to look different. Suddenly, the small moments that once felt ordinary start to stand out. The way you smiled at him when he walked into the room, the way you listened when he talked about things that didn't matter to anyone else, the way you made him feel without even trying. At first, he may not even realize it. Life keeps moving, distractions come easy, and he might think he's fine. But then something shifts. Maybe it's seeing your name pop up in a random conversation. Maybe it's hearing a song that reminds him of you. Maybe it's just sitting alone in a quiet moment when there's no noise, no distractions, no one else to fill the space. And suddenly, he starts to wonder, starts to replay those moments, starts to see them in a way he never did before. Because when you're no longer there, he has to rely on memory. And memory has a funny way of making people nostalgic. It filters out the noise, the everyday routine, the things he once overlooked. It highlights the best parts, the moments that mattered, the things he didn't appreciate enough when he had them. And now, without even realizing it, he starts to feel something he didn't expect: regret. Regret doesn't always come in a dramatic way. Sometimes it's just a quiet thought, a lingering what if, a realization that maybe he didn't fully see what he had, that maybe he let something slip away without truly understanding its value. And that's the moment when he starts to feel lucky or unlucky. Because if he realizes too late, if you've already moved forward, if you've already recognized your own worth and chosen to leave the past behind, then that luck is no longer in his hands. And that's the real shift. When you were always available, he had no reason to question anything, no reason to wonder, no reason to miss you. But when you walked away, when you reclaimed your space, when you started to live for yourself instead of proving your worth to him, everything changed. You didn't just become someone he missed. You became someone he admired, someone he respected, someone he saw in a different light. That's why no contact works. Not because it's a strategy, not because it's a trick, but because it forces reflection. It allows him to see what was always there, but what he was too close to appreciate. And when he comes back, when he reappears, when he suddenly realizes that you were someone special all along, the question isn't about him anymore. It's about you. Do you still want what you once thought you did? Or have you realized that the real prize was never him? It was always knowing your worth and never settling for less again. When a man reappears after no contact, it's easy to assume it means something deep, that it means he's realized your worth, that he's changed, that he's ready to do what he couldn't before. And maybe he has. Maybe the time apart made him see things clearly. Maybe the silence forced him to reflect. Maybe he genuinely regrets the way he treated you and wants to do better. But here's the truth. His return isn't the victory. See, people come back for different reasons. Sometimes it's loneliness. Sometimes it's curiosity. Sometimes it's ego, realizing that someone they thought would always be there is suddenly out of reach. And sometimes it's genuine. But the real question isn't why he came back. It's why it took his absence for him to see your value in the first place. It's why he needed to lose you to appreciate you. And more importantly, it's whether you still want what you once thought you did. Because when you go no contact, it's not just about making someone miss you. It's about giving yourself the space to see things clearly too. To step back and ask yourself, was I really happy? Was I really getting what I deserve? Because missing someone isn't the same as loving them. Regret isn't the same as commitment. And someone realizing your value after you're gone doesn't mean they're capable of treating you right now that they see it. That's why the real power isn't in his return, it's in your growth. In the way you no longer feel the need to chase, to prove, to convince anyone of your worth. In the way you no longer see his validation as the goal, because now you know something you didn't before. You know that your value doesn't increase because someone finally recognizes it. It was always there. And the right person, they won't need distance to see it. They'll know it in the moment. So when he comes back, when he reaches out, when he says he misses you, the real question isn't what he wants. It's what you want. Because now the power isn't in his hands, it's in yours.